All right, so we'll get started on the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, November 10th. Chris, you want to go ahead and read the Governor Baker order?
Sure. Let's see. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16th revised order extending remote participation by all members of any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right or the requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, and those who wish to do so may attend remotely by following the instructions on this agenda. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to General Law 7C 38, wow, that seems off, 38, Section 20, those who are recording must notify the chair that you are recording. The town is recording, so your voices and pictures are being taken. And then finally, pursuant to 241-1 of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, residents shall have the right to address a board on any item that requires a vote at a time before the board votes on such item. Residents will be allowed as much time as the proponent of an item is permitted to have. Randy?
All right, thank you very much. We'll start with a roll call attendance. Jeremy Ega.
Here.
Jonathan Henkin.
I am here.
Malcolm
In
Fick.
person. Here.
Jackie Kane.
Here.
Pedro Pachano is absent. Brandy Nelson is here. All right, moving on to our Form A for 126 and 140 Castle Hill Avenue. Chris, is there a representative online or in the audience?
Brian will come in as a panelist here in a second.
Okay, great.
And as soon as I am,
It looks like Brian's in. I'm
Okay.
curious if he can hear us.
Yes, I have you.
Hi, Brian.
Hi. So I was promoted and I clicked and I didn't hear anything for about 30 seconds. So are you ready?
We are ready. Please proceed.
Okay. So what you have before you is a pretty straightforward Form A. We're creating not a separate building lot. It's excess land for Mrs. Mary Stephen. What happened is that Mr. Hirsch has his driveway and a bunch of his improvements for his property is on Mrs. Stephen's land. And what they'd like to do is create this lot so that Mr. Hirsch's driveway is on his property and his pond and his waterfall, landscaping, as much as Mrs. Stevens would like to give him. The remaining lot of Mrs. Stevens meets zoning. It has enough sufficient area and frontage in the zone that it's in. It's in a R1A zone. And we present it to you as a A&R plan and ask you to endorse it.
All right, thank you very much. Board members, do we have any questions? Jeremy, do you have any questions?
So after this is done, is it going to be, are they going to make it one lot afterwards, the Hirsch lot? Or is it going to
Yes.
remain as a separate non-building lot?
No, it'll be combined. It's being
Yeah.
sold.
So it's going to be combined?
Yeah, they probably can't sell it without the driveway.
Probably true. All right, you all set, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Jonathan, do you have any questions?
Well, it's too bad that it's still a non-conforming lot. But
In terms of
so-
frontage?
yeah, it doesn't have the frontage, which could have been amended at this point, but Mary Stephen probably doesn't want to, or Stephen, whatever her name is.
Brian, do you have any insight into that?
Mrs. Stevens does not want to convey any more land than absolutely necessary. We're making a bad situation better, and we can't mandate how much land she just wants to convey to Mr. Hirsch.
Are there still improvements that appear to be with Mr. Hirsch that will actually be on Miss Stevens' property, specifically that stone wall near the waterfall?
Yeah, that's a stone wall, but there's no zoning violation there or anything to that effect. And Mrs. Stevens knows it's there. And this is what they agreed upon. This went back and forth about 4 times. So
Mhm.
this is what they came up with.
Okay. Malcolm, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Jackie,
What
do you
is-
have any? Oh, go ahead.
No, I don't.
Jonathan?
What are the 5 squares crossing that property?
Those are just
Mhm.
wooden posts. I don't know if he had lights on them or whatever he had on. They're just
I say, okay,
posts.
Birdhouses, you've got birdhouses, right?
Oh, okay.
possibly, I don't
I
know.
think, if I remember right.
It's possible, I can't remember.
Decorative things.
Okay.
So, excuse me, if we don't have any further questions, do we have a motion to endorse this plan?
So moved?
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we
Second.
have a second by Malcolm? Thank you. Any further discussion, board? All right, then we'll vote. Jonathan,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Jeremy? I saw you say aye, but I didn't hear it. Jeremy's having a technical difficulty, Kim, so I'll say aye, and I think Jeremy mouthed aye.
Aye, sorry,
Okay, thank you.
getting a call and my. Sorry
All
about
right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So that passes, and we'll move on to the minutes of October 27th. Do we have a
Thank you.
motion to approve? You're welcome, Brian. Have a good evening.
You
Do we
too.
have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved?
Thank you, Jonathan. And a second by Malcolm. Thank you. Any discussion, board? Hearing none. Jeremy, what's your vote?
that. Aye,
Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. All right. And the dog says aye. That's great.
Emphatically.
Standing in for Pedro. Item number 3, common driveway, Lake Mansfield Road, application from Bard College, care of Vicky Donahue for a common driveway at 105 Lake Mansfield Road, serving 3 existing dwelling units at 101, 103, and 105 Lake Mansfield Road. Are board members familiar with this location? And we received information in our packets.
Your
Followed by
applicants are
pound.
online.
You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter.
Okay, we've got
Pound.
somebody who's got some background noise. I see
You have
that.
not entered any numbers. Please
We can hear you.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
We
Yeah,
can.
we can.
Oh,
we can hear
good, good, good. Okay.
We wondered if your phone is having some trouble, though. We're getting some
Yeah,
strange.
some feedback. Yeah. I think
Bill,
it should be
Bill
good. now.
Morrison's on as well.
So we've got Mr. Morrison and Ms. Donahue from
Kane
Kane
Hibbert
Hibbert.
Myers, yeah.
Kane Hibbert.
Okay, do you want to just give us a brief explanation?
Sure. We have these existing lots that are on Lake Mansfield Road. And they were established by a A&R plan that was approved by the planning board in July of 1987. And then following the approval of this A&R, then they constructed the houses. We assume that there was a curb cut that was approved at the same time. For some reason, we're not able to find a common driveway permit in existence for the 3 lots. They have been in existence from the very beginning when they were established. So there's no change to the driveway. It's in the same configuration that it has been. We've got it laid out here. We've gone through, in terms of the application, gone through the various requirements for the common driveway. I'm happy to go through them individually if you'd like to. They're in the supplement to the application. But I think in terms of the proposal as a whole, then it complies with the requirements of the common driveway bylaw. And though it's not necessarily required to have a declaration of common driveway for maintenance purposes for just 3 dwelling units, then we do have that in effect. We have sold all 3 lots, and the current owners are listed at the beginning of the supplement. And we have also already recorded the declaration of common driveway and shared maintenance agreement with an amendment in 21 and 2022. Happy
So
to take any questions.
this is to basically correct a deficiency in the deeds to make it clear that there is an approved common driveway?
Yeah, it's not a title issue, it's just a common driveway issue. So
Okay,
we just recorded the declaration in the registry just for the 3 owners to know how they're going to share in driveway expenses.
okay. Great, that seems pretty clear. Board members, any questions? Jonathan?
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
Malcolm, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Jackie, do you have any questions? This is probably the first actual application that you're seeing, but we have a section 153 that lays out the requirements for a common driveway. We'd probably take a little more close look if it wasn't an existing common driveway, but this is a driveway that's been in existence.
So, okay.
Well, thank you, but I don't have any questions.
Jeremy, any questions?
I do not.
Okay, yes, in that case, do we have a motion to approve the common driveway?
No, wait,
Brandy, for the record, the police department, fire department, and public works have all weighed in.
Thank you.
and They're all fine with it.
Thank you. I think you had that on the front of the application. Okay. So motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Second by Malcolm. Okay, any further discussion? All right, board members, Jeremy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Brandy, aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Well-
much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay, item number 4, Barrington Brook Special Permit Public Hearing, application from Lennox Landing, Barrington Brook Holdings LLC, 59 Pine Ridge, Waban, Mass. 02468 for a special permit to modify the open space residential development special permit granted February 2013 to Stone Path Development for the open space boundary on Thrushwood Lane in accordance with section 8.7 and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. All right, do we have a vote to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm. Let's see. If there's no
Brandy?
further, yes,
Do we have any sense of, is Pedro going to be here for the next meeting if this is continued?
I believe he will be here for the next meeting. Yes,
So it's a health issue tonight?
it is. Yeah.
Just at one time.
Okay. So we don't need to elevate Jackie to her first.
No.
I don't think we need to elevate Jackie. We'll have Pedro review the record. All right.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Jeremy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Randy, aye. All right. Is there a representative of the applicant that wants to make a presentation?
Yes, there is.
So hopefully the mic will recognize you when you start speaking, Jim.
Can you hear me okay online? Okay. Good evening. For your record, my name is Jim Scalise. I'm a civil engineer with SK Design Group. We've been working on this particular project for a couple of decades, frankly. We're nearing the end, and we have an application before you for an amendment to the special permit. I think the special permit, as I review it at the kind of the what I'll call the 40,000 foot level, or is a fairly simple request in that we have a permit for 44 units, and we want to maintain the number of units as part of this OSRD, the Open Space Residential Development Plan. We'd like to relocate a house from one place on the development to another. We'd like to, where it gets more complicated is just how does it fit? How does it play into all the requirements of both the OSRD and the subdivision, frankly, that were both approved for this project. So in kind of going through that, I'll try to explain what I think is a reasonable outcome to this question. To review this project, I kind of went through the plans, our more recent plans. I think we're back in 2014. I have some documents from 2017. We have some documents from 2021. So there's a whole history that's kind of been ongoing. The good news is the project has a fair amount of recent development and further improvements in the site plan. So back in February of 2013, the planning board issued a decision for open space residential development for 44 single-family homes on the property. What we're going to be focusing on tonight is the second phase of this development, Brushwood Lane, which is really where the remaining work and undeveloped portions of the property still remain. The proposed request is to relocate lots 10 and 11, which are down at the end of the cul-de-sac on the east side. North end of the project is a cul-de-sac. If folks, I assume you all know what I'm talking about. If you look at us off of Christian Hill Road, we have Burning Tree, which is a loop road. And at the end of that, we have Londonderry, which is a circle, and then off of that, we have this final phase 2, which we had called the estate lots as part of the original permit. I think everyone's familiar. What we're really talking about is to take lots 10 and 11, which originally proposed 2 units. And 1 unit was actually developed on that 2 lots, with the unit being placed right on the common boundary, which you can see on the color aerial, both online and then here in person at this location. And then our proposal is to take, we'll call it lot 11's unit, and relocate it to an area over on lot 1. The project was designed, the density was debated, the density being set at 44 units. Our goal is to maintain that density. I think that the trickier part is how we manage all the other requirements, which many of them fall away, and that the impacts from traffic, sewer, water use, other municipal impacts are all related to the number of dwelling units. Open space really becomes an issue. And I think there's some other kind of questions relating to open space. And this, in my mind, is an opportunity to kind of clean that up as we near completion of the project. So under this amendment request, I call it the lost dwelling unit, or this lot 11 dwelling unit will be relocated to lot 1, and lot 1 will be subdivided under an A&R process as to lot 1A and 1B. And that particular piece of land, which is on the approved subdivision, lot 1, has sufficient area and frontage to accommodate 2 lots. I do say in the application that we'll apply for that process simultaneously. I think as an alternative, it makes more sense to file that A&R without being presumptuous if and when this application is considered favorably or not. So I'm going to put that kind of as a second step rather than do that simultaneously. The project as a whole is compliant with the master plan. That is one of the questions as part of any special permit. It's clustered housing. It is housing for seniors. I think are 2 attributes that are mentioned. It still provides the requisite open space. The original project required, the requirements under the bylaw for 50% open space for a project of this type. And as part of that process, we ended up with 63% open space. So our goal here is to carve out areas of open space around this phase 2 to supplement the existing open space, maintain all the requirements. It's not in a right of way. It's not in a setback. And release an area of open space to allow this house to be built. So this is, and if you look at some of the other permitting, like the subdivision permit, it's very specific about the area of open space. So without having to amend that permit, it's important that for this to go forward, the way I envision it going forward would be that the amount of open space needs to remain nearly the same or greater, equal or greater than what was originally approved. So if I kind of run through a quick list, under wetlands, traffic, subdivision, dimensional requirements, none of those change. For example, traffic trip generation is based on the number of dwelling units. exactly the same number of dwelling units as we did under the original approval. So I don't see the project really having impacts as it relates to, typical site plan review kind of questions. So the open space boundary must be changed. So if you look at the plans, I've shaded in areas where there's available land for open space. If you supplement the existing contiguous open space with these areas, you actually end up with a slight increase in the amount of open space area. I think the decision before you is really related to, is the open space value the same? So as I looked at that, open space originally discussed as part of this project was discussed as woodland, as forested land. That's what I stood here 10 years ago and talked about. Although as I looked at the bylaw in preparing this, it doesn't actually require that. The bylaw talks about it not being in right of ways, that it not being hard surface, that it being used for recreational purposes, but doesn't specifically designate whether it's forested or lawn. So I think you have that latitude, but I'm trying to be transparent and tell you, if I'm sitting on the board and I have to make this decision, this would be the crux of it. Is this open space equal in value to the open space that we're trading? Because you have a wooded area that you're trading. The only reason I didn't have a unit proposed here initially, to be honest, was that the neighbor had imposed a 200-foot setback from their line. That has since been terminated. It was a private agreement. So I now have that land available, or I would have proposed, honestly, a unit there initially. So was this land always developable? Yes. It was only created as open space at the requirement of a private agreement with the neighbor. So I think the justification to say that, woodland and lawn area could be considered equal. I think this board would have firm footing in making that decision, and that the open space provided is significantly greater than that required under the bylaw. So my argument would be in that debate that, we're at 63%. Frankly, the board could decide that we don't need to do anything with open space, and you could just release this and we would still be in compliance with the OSRD, and that we would still have more than the 50% minimum required. So I think there's that latitude is available. I don't know what the board's pleasure is on that regard. There's several steps that need to happen here still. And it's difficult to have a presentation on this project over the last, I've done this several times, and every time we kind of run into the conversation of what's our status, where are we, and where are we going? So I've kind of put together that answer. It's not really here for a decision, but I framed it as a request to look at, kind of where we are. So if I give you an update of where we are, there's 5 houses under construction. I have permission for 1 certificate of occupancy available to me at this time.
So in other words, 5 have been granted, 1 more may be granted.
Right. It's my understanding that there's 1 available certificate of occupancy.
A total of 6 may be granted at this time.
Right.
Right.
So what I'm asking for is for the in this letter, which isn't really relevant for maybe tonight's decision, but it's just to kind of start that conversation and kind of answer the question. I'm preempting your question here. Is what kind of where are we? So I have 5 houses under construction, really 1 available certificate. So I have 4 houses under construction that are going to need a certificate of occupancy in the short term. I mean, these buildings have windows, they're coming, they're going to be looking for that soon. So kind of how is that playing out? The way it's kind of been managed as the covenant for this project, the certificates of occupancy have been managed by the town to ensure that the developer follows through on the promises made through the permitting process, which is what a subdivision covenant is for. Back in 2017, my office did a detailed cost estimate of what was required to finish this project. And in doing so, we came up with a value of about $450,000 worth of work that was required. Now, if I pull that number forward with about 3% inflation, which until this year was pretty reasonable.
3%?
Until this year, yeah. We're pretty reasonable. So yeah, now it's crazy. But the value of the work that we laid out is probably worth $550 rather than $450. It's more. The applicant has spent in recent times, based on invoices and work that I've seen, about $484,000. So we spent about 85 to 90% of the work has been completed, just based on dollar value. What the applicant would like to do is request a certificate for the 4 houses under construction, which would still leave 6 future houses to be built, which would give the town still sufficient leverage as it relates to completing the project. And I point out in this letter, there's still work to be done. You know, the things, since the paving is completed, the remaining work includes enlargement of the detention basin. That was part of our revised plan. That excavation work needs to happen. The preparation of a final landscape plan. I'm not sure that we ever, it's a condition of the permit that we submit a final landscape plan. And that's not a process I remember us fulfilling. And then fulfilling that plan. When we come in and say we're going to plant some trees, we need to actually plant the trees. Preparing and filing a new open space plan. So now being a little presumptuous, assuming this is approved in some form, if we do adjust or modify this, we need to go back and submit recorded plans. The way it was done previously is the building lot plans for this project include the open space, and these are recorded. So these would need to be amended if we, go forward. But just to kind of understand the framework of what we're dealing with, and I'm trying not to be presumptuous here, but I'm trying to understand, what we're actually talking about. So you'd have to adjust the open space markers to reflect any modifications, and that would need to be recorded. And then I guess, as we go through this project to finish it, like when we're modifying the detention basin and we do an as-built, or we do a final inspection on the sewer or the drain, there may be some punch list items that we find, and I think it would be fair. But we've spent, $450,000, we're asking for 4 releases, and you have 6 left. So just to kind of put it in context, I think
6 left after the 4 releases.
that's right. I have future houses. There's 6 of them here. Oh, again, there's 5, assuming you approve another one. There would be 6. So 5 or 6.
Which you're not asking for tonight. You're just.
I'm going to submit tonight a request for you guys to process in the normal course of events. It just seemed appropriate as I'm kind of going through this presentation in my mind in my office today. I'm saying this is going to be part of this conversation, I think. So I thought I'd be prepared. Thank you. That's all I have.
Randy?
All right, so next item would be questions from the board. So board members, who has questions?
Well, I'll start. If you're all right with that, Randy.
Go ahead, Jonathan, please.
Well, first of all, Jim, the plan that you submitted is not accurate.
Also,
It doesn't reflect what's built there.
that was the original open space plan. I was just trying to give you a locus.
I know, but you're submitting this on an application and it's signed and it's incorrect.
Okay, I can revise it.
And so it would be nice if it actually reflected what's
You're
there.
talking about phase 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even look at phase 1, to be honest with you.
And secondly, there's a lot of wetlands here. And the bylaw requires 50%, minimum 50%, not including of 50% of developable land.
That's correct.
So do we have those numbers? What's developable and what is?
Developable land was 37.2 acres. Steep slopes and wetland and riverfront area was 41.4 acres, and that's right on the cover sheet.
Yeah.
For a total of 78.6 acres.
And the whole parcel is what, 150?
I don't have that number.
106 or?
I thought it was 150 something.
Yeah, I remember it being 150 too,
Oh.
but I just don't wanna. Yeah, I don't have that overall property plan. I just have this plan. I can answer that for you.
So, but I don't, unless I'm misreading this, I don't think that the wetlands can be used as open space. According to the bylaw.
I agree. Excludes wetlands and steep slopes.
It excludes wetlands and steep slopes.
Right.
So they're increasing the developable land that would be open space. They're not decreasing.
But
I'm not using wetlands to offset the uplands.
no, but if you've got. You're saying that there's 43 acres of developable land. If, as you're proposing it, is that correct?
Yeah, you're kind of going back to the beginning here on me, which I wasn't.
I am.
I
haven't looked at this since 2013.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't expecting to go back to the drawing board on the whole project. I was just looking at, I focused on the proposal to just make an adjustment for one lot. If you'd like me to go back through those calculations, that would, to verify, where we are, I can do that. I'm not prepared to answer that right now.
Malcolm, do you have any questions?
I do not, no.
The other thing is that, Brandy, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
it seems like. What is designated as open space. Has, a lot of it's been cleared. Behind the houses, I don't know how,
So this area has been cleared. C, and then there's an area here that's been cleared that I know was a question that Chris had, that's not part, it's still open space as far as our proposal is concerned. In reading the bylaw, it actually says areas around, it specifically says areas around detention basins up to the top of the berm can be considered open space. It actually, it says that, so I added those areas, but that's all wooded. Other than the area around the basin, I just don't want big trees growing on my detention basin berm, but other than that, if you want us to supplement, if that were a concern, area C, for example, if you wanted me to plant trees in there, that could be part of our landscape plan. that I could come in with.
I mean, open space doesn't include lawn area.
I think it can. It's totally your decision. I just, under the bylaw, and I was surprised to read it that way,
Yeah, I don't
frankly,
think- I
so
don't
I'm
think
not
that's-
here to,
I don't
I'm
think
not here to
that's-
argue with you about
I
that.
don't think
It's
that's
just,
the intention.
okay, so if, like I said, I still need to do a landscape plan. I understand that landscaping is an issue that remains on this project, so if if that were the issue, I think we make it a condition that, this needs to be resolved, and we come back with a landscape plan that's sufficient, and that would be reasonable and fair in my opinion, for sure.
It also seems it would be helpful if you actually could survey what's been cleared and what's not.
This line has been surveyed, these trees.
So I can speak a little bit.
That's an
The
as-built.
tree line?
Yeah.
I surveyed this,
The tree line?
yes,
Okay,
oh, yeah.
So
No, I
Chris,
didn't ask.
okay.
I'd like Chris to explain because he was out there. I have a question about the degree of accuracy on this drawing as well, as far as representing the open space.
On the site plan?
Correct.
I'm just saying, on this site plan or on the 100 scale plan? On what scale plan, Brandon? The 50 scale site plan?
The one with the aerial.
So,
Okay,
so I think that the open space boundary that is depicted on the plan submitted, as well as depicted on the aerial that I'm tracing with my hand now. This dash dot dot dash dot dot line. Everybody see that?
Mhm.
I was in the field today and I was able to find most of the open space delineating pins. So they're all iron rods with a red pin on it, surveyed by a surveyor and recorded on the deed. I was able to find most of those. Including up in here, above lots 14 and 15. Back behind 13, 12, 11. The area behind that line, opposite the houses, that has not been cleared. This is not pristine woodland. It's full of invasives and rocks and brambles but that's not a new condition. Back on the back of lots. I think this is 9, 8, 7. There's kind of a boulder line, a line of boulders you can see on this aerial that I'm tracing now, my hand. The clearing goes up to those boulders. And behind that, the pins are where they should be. They've not been disturbed that I can tell. So all along the back there, and then coming back to around the back of lot 6, everything is good and hasn't been cleared. The open space hasn't been disturbed. The open space has been disturbed on lots 4 and 5 that I'm showing with, and that was a question that Brandy had in a comment, a question to me, which I forwarded to the applicant, and they verified, yes, that was supposed to be open space. It was cleared.
And also behind 14 and 15, it's like, right?
No, 14 and 15, that's an
I think
area,
there
that's
is-
an area to be added behind 14 and 15.
Yeah, but there is some clearing. Yeah, it's not, yeah, right. It's
There is clearing.
There's a tiny, yeah, that you might say right there.
It was cleared.
Jonathan.
It was cleared up to the pins.
Right there, it looks like it's right at the, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it cleared
see,
up to
okay.
the pins.
Okay.
So if it were to be substituted back in, the board might want it to be planted.
Mhm.
Now, just going back down to the other side. So this area, lots 4 and 5 was cleared, but after that, I was able to find all of the pins on the designated open space boundary wrapping up back up to Thrushwood Lane, over to the detention basin. So this all exists currently as uncleared open space. The one place I disagree on with the applicant is this area behind the detention basin has been, which is designated to be gained as new open space, was this area is actually cleared.
Here, it's here, it's on the plan. Let me see.
Oh, yeah,
You see it?
yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I'm
actually-
mistaken.
It's
Yeah,
over
so,
here. There's some earth put in there.
yeah, I think the area that you're asking to substitute, which I'm indicating with the hand behind the detention basin, that is cleared now. But I should clarify, it was not cleared past the open space boundary. So if you were to add it back in, you'd have to maybe landscape it. Yeah.
Great.
What are you
That's,
showing?
that's next to the base, the
Here,
drainage
that's
basin.
this area. You can see.
Yeah, Jonathan's showing the debris and construction pile in this area.
And it's all been cleared.
This area
It's right on here, Ken. Right?
has been,
Could be, I don't know.
That's the, now, has it changed since the date of my survey?
Yeah.
But that's what I agree.
This is from a couple days ago.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that there was clearing.
so the open space boundary I'm tracing with my hand. These are the pins that I could find the pins up to about here. And then this area is gone. This is destroyed with
There's
piles
piles of earth.
fill
Yeah,
and-
absolutely.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that area is gone. They're proposing to remove it from the designated open space anyway, but in general. And there's pins on the other side of Thrushwood Lane indicating that there hasn't been clearing of any significant type that I could find.
I think we have violations of open space if you use the woodland definition here. Frankly, and here are areas that
Yes.
I need to manage before I can come back to you with a final
Yeah,
request
So
for
the-
release.
violations on lot 1 and back on 4 and 5, but other than that, what you see on the aerial is just. I mean, this is probably a aerial taken in April or March even, I don't even know, but
Yeah,
it's,
Leaves are off the trees.
leaves are off the trees, this area is not. Cleared, so as far as that goes, except for lot 1 and 4 and 5, the open space boundary's been respected. Okay.
So I have a question. I'm looking at the bylaw and I can't see anything that requires the open space to be woodland.
I went through it again today, and I agree
There's
with you,
there's no
but-
reference to woodland, trees, or anything in the open space requirement.
I don't think I indicated that there was.
No, but
If you read the purpose, there is. To encourage the permanent preservation of open space, agricultural land, forestry land, wildlife habitat, wetlands, steep slopes, and historical.
but also to promoting creation of usable and suitably located common open space.
Right.
And
Usable.
also to reduce the amount of disturbance in development, which I think has been not undertaken with this project. My recollection of the definition of the open space boundary was that we were trying to accommodate the developer and the desire to build out with as much density as they could while preserving the woodland, because prior to 2019, when the circle was cleared, this was all pretty dense woodland area. It wasn't open, and there's clearly clearing that is extended beyond the open space boundary. And I think at the time there was a lot of discussion from one of our previous board members, Susie Fowle, about what happens when we create all this boundary land between a lawn and a woodland space. You invite invasives, just like Chris said he saw today. You get a high degree of environmental diversity that isn't necessarily native in these boundaries between a mechanically cleared space and a woodland space. And I, for one, have concerns that the applicant doesn't, they may have set the pins in the right place, Chris, but they've definitely cleared beyond the pins in a lot of instances. And I have a low degree of confidence that we'll get a reforestation plan or even an open space plan that will be meaningful in terms of the original approval for this.
All right, I think there's a clear sense of what's been disturbed that shouldn't have been at this point. Hopefully that answers your question.
And quite frankly, why are we even being asked to add an additional lot? I mean, the four existing houses, I don't really like the feeling of having kind of a CO gun pointed at our heads saying, we've got four houses that are going to be waiting for COs, one of which was built down the center of a property line. I mean, that's not a decision this board made. The developer made that decision. So, you know, if Jim, if you're trying to impress a sense of urgency upon us to quick approve
this. No, I wasn't.
I'm not impressed with how this developer has performed.
I guess I was trying to forewarn the board that we would be before you in the short term with making that request, and I didn't want to surprise you with that request, so I was trying to make it more comprehensive. That was my approach. There's no urgency. It's this, and you know, we had a subdivision here that was going to have a sprawling development, and we've come back and clustered it, and I think we've accomplished that goal. I think this project has been under construction for far too long, and we're all staring at it half built for a really long time, and it's a mess. And I'm not here to argue any of that with you. I'm telling you that and I've been telling you this for years, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing it, but the solution here is to finish it. And so that's kind of where we all are in this boat together, trying to finish it. So we're here to ask for that other unit because it seemed that this project was developed based on the number of dwelling units, not really on lots. And whether the lot was at the north end of the project or the south end of this phase didn't seem to be really a talking point previously. And it seemed reasonable to maintain the same number of units because that's how an OSRD is reviewed and approved. If that's not appropriate, then we can pack up and go home. That's okay. I just I thought it was reasonable to ask.
Do you want to take public comment, Brandy?
Sure, we can open it up to public comment.
And there are folks in the room as well, so why don't you go ahead and determine how you
So
want to
it looks
proceed.
like we have a couple of hands raised, and Chris, I think we also received at least one letter from a member of the public.
Whose hand is raised?
Okay, do you know who raised their hand first? Was it Eileen or Stanley? Eileen, we'll go with you first then,
Go ahead, Eileen.
unless it was a cat raising the hand.
No, not this time. I have a question.
Go
Why,
ahead, Eileen.
I have a question. Why does it say existing house, but the house can't be seen? I just don't understand that and what was being shown. So,
Yeah. I believe, and Mr. Scalise, you can respond to this, but I believe it's because the aerial is from 2021. It's
Right.
just a mass GIS image. The houses, I think, have been constructed in the last 12 months or so.
thank you. Got it?
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Mr. Brown? You should be able to unmute yourself, sir.
Hopefully I just did that.
You did.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay, good. And thanks for letting me speak. So a couple of initial things that Mr.
I
Scalise.
should. All
Come
right,
on.
Jim, I should have asked this of Eileen. Could you please just state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Stanley Brown. The address is 2 Thrushwood Lane, Great Barrington.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of initial thoughts that really respond to some things that Mr. Scalise said. One is that I certainly agree that landscaping is an issue that needs to be resolved in the future. At this point, it took us 1.5 years to get the parking lot by the pool paved, and there hasn't been a flower or any other landscaping put in. So we don't have a lot of confidence. Certainly, I don't have a lot of confidence in this. Now, as to the housing for seniors, I am a senior. But the fact of the matter is, this is housing for anyone that is willing to purchase it. Let me, though, go to the main points that I have. And I am the person that, I'm an abutter, obviously, and I'm the person who wrote the letter on November 7th that goes through my concerns in quite detail, and I'll try to just summarize them. But let me say this. And I think the date is July of 2013, the planning board approved a plan that protected certain land, designated land in perpetuity. And I emphasize that word. Now, what this developer would like to do is remove land from that protection to build another house. That's not a house to be built on lot 1. That's a house to be built on the protected land. And there's a reference to, in the builder's application, to a lost house. This house was not lost. What happened was, as I think is pretty obvious, the builder built a huge house that straddles 2 lots. He made a business decision to do that. He didn't lose it. It wasn't misplaced. He made a business decision to do that. And if you look at the map, and I've got the aerial map up here, most of the land, most of the protected land that would be lost, and I think it's about 27,000 square foot, is wooded land. It's very pretty. I've gone back there and I've snowshoed. That's woodland. And what is proposed here by way of, I think the word that's used is exchanged, is for the most part land that is mostly scrub and weeds. Now, I'm glad Chris Rembo walked through the lot because I don't have access, or I haven't seen the stakes and those sorts of things. So there's a little bit of guesswork in terms of what I'm going to say, but what you see as you walk down there, and if you walk towards the cul-de-sac, is that beyond this land that is protected land that would be built on, is land that is basically just, I'm trying to find the right word, but it's whatever is on there by way of woodland is gone. There's a huge mound in the area around the detention pond is mostly weeds and scrub. There's a lot of trees that have been knocked down. So to me, the idea that calling this an exchange is kind of absurd. And if you look at, so the big piece of land that would be, that is protected, that would not be protected any longer, I've talked about. Across the street and adjacent to my house is another piece of land that is to be lost under this proposal, and that's about 5,000 square feet. Now, I happened to get out of my car. It was Mr. Ward was around. He's the guy that's involved with the developer, and I asked him about the woodland, and he said, "Oh no, that's not going to be gone." But as I look at this plan, I look at the aerial plan, that's also land where woodland is going to be knocked down. And what is proposed as substitute is pretty much pretty much scrub, weeds, not the woodland that would be destroyed as a result of this particular plan. So that in a nutshell is what I'm concerned about. To me, this so-called exchange is kind of a charade. I would invite all of you or any of you that are interested to see for yourself. And to me, I would also say it's part of a continuing disregard for protected land by this developer. There's protected land in the middle of Londonderry that has been used to store construction trailers. Most recently, it was used as a dump site for boulders. I've seen no open space management plan, no annual report, no forester. There's still construction fence in open land, in protected land all along this area. It just seems to me a cavalier disregard of the obligations to protect land. And it's for that reason that I think that this amended plan should be rejected. And I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it. Looks like we have another hand raised, Chris. Mr.
We have a member in
Perlow?
we have a person in the audience also who'd like to speak.
Okay. Let's go with the person in the audience and the person online.
My name is Stephen White. I'm in a butter. I live in lot 3. Our house was the first house in the development. So I've kind of seen the whole progression of this project. I have a lot of sympathy for what Stan Brown has said and has told you. But I also am very eager to see this project finished. We've been living there 4.5 years, and it's just not fun to be in the middle of a construction site this long. Again, with respect to what Stan Brown has said and agreement with many of his points, we're just very eager to get this thing done. And if I believe that the developer needs to do this and therefore support this this petition.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Mr. Perlow?
Can you hear me now?
We can. Please
Yes.
go ahead.
My name is Jonathan Perlow. I'm the owner of 13 Londonderry, which is the lot adjoining lot 1. And it seems like you're doing the appropriate due diligence, and I appreciate that. My only observation is whether sort of taking one large kind of chunk of open space and trading that for like a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit, you know, somewhere else really meets the sort of purpose of having open space. And so that's the only kind of thought that I would ask you to consider as to whether it's really a fair exchange, in the sense of, why do we want open space? In particular, this open space is near the road, whereas the other proposed open space is kind of, you know, behind the houses. And so in terms of its impression, you know, it certainly gives a different impression. So that's my only thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public that wish to make comment? Is there anyone else in the meeting room, Chris?
No.
All right, I don't see any additional hands. All right, well, I think at a, well, I guess, Chris, are there comments from other boards and commissions? We can go through that. I think you said the select board reviewed it and. Board of
Correct.
Health?
The select board made a positive recommendation. The Board of Health and the Conservation Commission determined that they have no jurisdiction here, so Board of Health, because the properties are on sewer, they're generally concerned with septics and wells. And the Conservation Commission would be concerned with streams and wetlands, and none of the proposed work is within those jurisdictional areas.
Can anyone on the select board read plans?
Was the conscom wasn't concerned about increase in impervious contributing to the drainage basin? They usually cover stormwater also, right?
They did not comment on that.
I attended their meeting and was told by the commission that they have no concerns about the project.
I will say that as I walked behind lots 4, 5, 6, that's where there's a pretty significant down gradient from the houses down into the woodland towards the stream. And all the silt fences there are holding up well. And they're all out proud of the open space, so.
Jim,
That
didn't
was
the original
good
grading
too.
plan anticipate some sort of stormwater treatment that runs parallel to the edge of woodland down there? Is that installed?
Yes, we
It's-
actually had some pervious driveways on the original plan. Some pervious pavement, and that was not installed. So in lieu of that, I did a drainage study to correct that. And they've installed infiltrator chambers behind the units. So I've installed additional, I would say on 4 or 5 lots, I've installed infiltration measures, and I have HydroCAD calculations to show that.
You've observed that those have gone in?
Yeah, yes.
And what is the long-term maintenance plan for those?
There's a plan included with the design, but there's
I understand that you probably did
Yeah.
a really good job, but what is it in the homeowners association to maintain those infiltrators?
Yeah, well, it says to maintain the stormwater management system in accordance with the operation and maintenance plan, which it's now part of. So, you
Sure.
know, I can't promise beyond the preparation of the plans and documents.
And then I had a question about the detention basin being properly constructed. And you had some comment about that. Can you just share that with the board?
Sure. As part of the amendment to the project, there was a grading plan prepared to upgrade the existing detention basin. And that work has not been done yet. It needs to be done. It's, this whole work area was, has been neglected as part of the project, frankly, and it's would be a focus if, depending on either way, I think as this application goes, it'll become a focus soon because this house is still approved. And as part of constructing this lot development, which is lot 1 right now, the plan was is to do that detention basin at that time. So I guess you can see me now, I think. This house is approved. This house is proposed. Here's the detention basin. The goal would be that when we're grading for this house, that we'll have equipment in that area. This will be cleared. We'll have erosion controls in place, and that will be that work will be done at that time.
Was that detention basin created or was that naturally occurring?
No, it was built originally. When we came back the last time, we actually extended the road, I don't know, 150 feet. I'm kind of going off of memory, but the cul-de-sac was here. We moved it further to the north as part of this plan. And when we did that, we created, you know, a more impervious area. So we had to enlarge the basin to make that work. And then the plan that I have before you tonight, actually the grading works where I can capture the backyard runoff from these lots and route it to that same pond. So I can make the stormwater, you know, from an engineering perspective, by putting a house here, I can make the stormwater work.
But the stormwater would work without a house there as well.
Oh, certainly. Certainly. Yeah, one less roof, it'll work better. Yeah.
I have a thought. I wonder if we could approach this in a slightly different sequence. You introduced the topic that you need, you would like to have COAs
4 of them.
for the, which would still leave 6 remaining building lots that the town would
In the coming months.
would hold. And you want to add another lot, but there's some concern about the open space. I wonder if we could ask you to come back and ask for this additional lot after you complete a landscape plan that shows how the open space that has been cleared will be recovered, how the open space, what the open space will look like after it's done. And then we'd feel, I would feel more comfortable anyway with feeling that maybe some of the concerns of the residents could be allayed before we go further with our building lot.
Malcolm, that sounds reasonable. I just want a clarification from you. Are you asking just to see a drawn plan that Mr. Scalise puts together, or are you asking that they implement a landscape plan? Because there is a landscape plan.
Yeah, I mean, I thought creating the landscape plan was part of the remaining
I
tasks.
think the application for the OSRD included a landscape plan, but there was a condition of the, I believe the OSRD that said submit a landscape plan. So it's an issue I was going to take up with Chris just to make sure I have enough planning. Okay, and then how we implement that. I think there's ways to manage that.
Well, you would have to implement the plan before we release the 6 additional lots.
Oh, the 6 aren't a question. I think in my mind, if we knew we had this lot as a conversation, if we came up with a landscape plan and I went to a bona fide landscaper and got a contract, signed that contract and put that money in a passbook account, cash in the town's name, for crying out loud, guaranteed paid, you know, then maybe we could have a conversation before we planted it. But other than that, I would expect that we would have to do the work and it would be approved. That would be a reasonable request, at least from my perspective.
And that would be reasonable from my perspective, but I don't know how the other board members feel about it.
Brandy, Jackie wants to make.
Oh,
a
yeah,
point.
please, Jackie.
No, it's a question, not a point. I was just
Sorry.
wondering what the difference is between a landscape plan and an open space management plan that I heard Mr. Brown talk about.
So the management plan is part of the original, is it okay if I answer this? As part of the original application, we submitted a several page document prepared by a forester on how we were going to manage this, meaning they were going to walk. Typically what they do is they have the forester walk this on an annual basis they'll point out areas that require work, like if there's invasive starting to crop up. If you get that earlier, it's better than getting it later, and they proliferate. So that would be a real short synopsis of what that open space management plan is to walk the undeveloped forested land and take a census of what's going on with it to make sure it remains healthy.
Do we have one of those for now?
We have the original plan. There's been no follow-up on that plan, as far as I'm aware.
And that differs from the landscape plan.
The landscape plan is talking about planting trees and bushes for beautification usually. On a project like this, I would expect that there would be input at this point from the homeowners, but I would expect there being some shade trees along the road at a minimum, and then maybe further plantings. An example in an area where there's been clearing in the open space.
Yeah, I was thinking there are 3 different categories, right? There's your general site landscaping. There's the open space that's been disturbed on lots 4 and 5, and I guess 1 we have to think about. And then there is, I think, for board discussion, whether or not we think there needs to be a planting plan for areas that are cleared. I don't know, Chris, to me, they look like they're cleared beyond the open space boundary, and there's invasive species in those areas. So I could be wrong. I didn't traverse it by foot. I just observed from the road.
No, I walked the boundary, and as I said, I saw most of the pins. There were no, cut trees beyond those pins. There were cut trees, in front of those pins, and, up to, close to silt fences and barriers and boulders that were close to the pins. But except for those areas on lot 1, where the debris pile is and the fill pile is, and the areas on lot 4 and 5, there's not been clearing beyond the boundary.
Is there invasive species management work that needs to be done? Like, is there an establishment of bittersweet running up those areas in the back of the lots, or?
There will be, there certainly will be soon, but once you get back behind the boulders, it was relatively easy walking. In some of the areas it's that have not been disturbed, it's sort of a legacy problem, I think, there. Unfortunately, it will get worse if it's not dealt with.
It seems to me, if I may, it would be appropriate for us to come back, request maybe an extension with an expectation, it may be for more than a month. But prepare a plan, review what we've submitted as a landscape plan, supplement that plan, and then also have an assessment done in accordance with our open space management and submit that to you for your record. I think so. We have 3 items under what I'll call site landscaping, but we have an open space issue that we just talked about that hasn't been followed through on, that we could follow through on, at least right now. I think with those 2 pieces, we'd be closer to being able to have a meaningful conversation about this proposal. Does that sound right?
That sounds fine. I wonder if anyone else on the board is looking for any additional information to support the special permit on why an additional lot should be created. I recognize it's the same number of units, but it would be creation of an additional lot, and that again wasn't something that the board made a decision on. That was something the developer made a decision to do, which was to create 1 house on 2 lots. Do we need any more justification?
I don't think so, Brandy. I mean, I'm not concerned about the number of lots. I'm concerned about the number of buildings. The layout has been fluid. I mean, we've approved changes before on where houses are going to be on this property. It just seems like this is another similar request.
Well, this is a significantly different request.
Well, it's only a request because they built 1 building on 2 lots.
Right, that was their
They
decision.
chose to do that. I know, I understand it, but
And it was a financial decision.
Mhm.
And
But what's wrong with coming back and asking for another place for the?
There's nothing wrong with asking.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with asking. That's true.
And
I'm just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have any objection to it in principle. I mean, but I am concerned about if the residents or if this is going to be viewed as something else that's going to delay the completion of the project, which I agree with you. We've been sitting here for 10 years too. and we'd all like to see it completed as soon as possible.
I think then in terms of that comment, Malcolm, Jim, if you can include a schedule for completion of the landscape improvements, I think, lots of nice things get said at meetings and lots of nice plans get created, but implementation seems to be where we sometimes are falling short here. And implementation is taking an extraordinary amount of time. The phased landscaping could go in with the phased development, and I don't think we've seen that happen.
You want to take another comment, Brandy, from Stan Brown?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. You should be able to unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, I have two comments. One is that not granting the right to build this new house on protected land will not, in my view, delay the project. It just means he won't build another house. The other point I would make is that whatever landscape plan the builder comes up with, and I'm not confident based on past experience that it'll be meaningful one, it will never substitute for knocking down a large number of trees on land that was supposed to be protected in perpetuity. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. And I don't disagree with you about knocking down large trees, but the sooner we plant new ones, the sooner they have time to grow and become large trees. So I think, Jim, also what we would need is in that landscape plan, just recognizing where you are in the town. Any landscaping is going to need a certain amount of protection and guarantee to be meaningful. Deer browsing is a significant issue, and I'm sure folks in the rest of the development have experienced that.
If I hear you correctly, you're suggesting I should plant something larger.
Or be ready to put protection around it until it can get larger.
Okay, understood.
All right, so let's see, at this point in our process. Oh, Jeremy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a couple. So the open space management plan, how does that go? Is it the homeowners association takes that on?
Ultimately, yes.
And so that hasn't been taken on since there has been homeowner associations? Is it one for the entire project or multiple?
Well, the project's in two phases. I can't
Yeah.
speak for phase one. I would suggest that phase one has been dedicated and that there is a homeowners association. But I think at this point, it would be appropriate for the developer. I'm going to suggest that we just perform one for the entire project to come back here with some degree of credibility to share with you. And then once we have it done and we know what it costs, we can share that with the homeowners association so they have a template to go forward. So it seems to me that's what's probably got to happen for this to go.
Do you know, Jim, if the homeowners association is represented by the residents as well as the developer, or is it still mostly controlled or wholly controlled? Mr. Brown may know too.
There's several amendments that are in the registry. That's what I'm going by. I think phase two still has a large developer footprint and that there's 10 units not occupied. But phase one is built out.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, do you know?
Yeah, here's what I can tell you.
Okay.
There are actually 4 homeowners. I am I unmuted still?
You are unmuted, sir.
All right, good. So there are actually four homeowners association or trust agreements. There's one overall Barrington Brook HOA, and then there's another for the area down where I am, which they call, for want of a better word, estates. And then there's something called the cottages, which are the condos up the hill. Both the overall association and the estates association are in the hands of the builder. That's because he hasn't sold enough lots that get you over the tipping point where it actually goes to homeowners. The cottages is an independent homeowners association. There's a fourth one, and I never really understood what that was. A couple of lots up by the cottage.
Original lots.
Yeah,
The
original lots.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works at this point, which means that the homeowners themselves are really not in charge of this.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Did that
Okay.
answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, and so my second question is, in that lot one, so most of the trees in lot one are still there, and it's just what you were saying, Chris, by walking it, is there's just debris piles in it?
I'll try to describe what I saw.
And I'm sorry, and then I guess what the trees that Mr. Brown is talking about are the trees that are in front of the proposed house in lot one? Is that?
That's correct, Jeremy. Hopefully you can see my screen. So the trees to be removed are existing in this area close to the intersection of Londonderry and Thrushwood on lot one. So those exist now and they're proposed to be removed. That's what Mr. Brown's talking about.
There's no existing trees where the footprint of the house is?
There are no existing trees where the footprint of the approved future house is nearest the detention basin on lot one. There are no trees there. The tree cover here where the crosshatched proposed future house is, there are some towards the back, but this is mostly fill and like stumps and boulders and things like that. So this is an area which should have been protected open space. That's some of this area beyond the evergreen canopy that you can see on this aerial. The area beyond that is under a big pile of stuff. So that's gone. I didn't see any of the pins back there. The area behind the detention basin is the pins are there and it's all intact, but the area of the future house is already disturbed.
And so the trees, so part of the trees that were outside of the open space in the what was lot one, those are still existing, but were always planned to be removed, correct? No, to the left of that, in front
Yes,
of.
these were always planned to be removed.
Okay.
Lisa is, I think, wanting to maybe clarify what I was.
Well, I was gonna ask a question that kind of feeds off of your question, Jeremy, if that's okay. I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, if I kind of take a couple steps forward, I think I'm gonna find myself at my desk and I'm curious what your reaction is to my brainstorm here. That the gentleman on lot 16 who's has issue with me removing trees. So if I pick an area here and draw a bubble diagram and I say I'm gonna save trees there, how do I do that? Well, a way to do that would be to create a common driveway with the existing one proposed on lot one already. And I guess, is there any immediate reaction to a common driveway for two houses? Would that be considered a negative? by this board? If,
It would be a positive.
No, it would not be a negative.
okay, I think I can plan better, and maybe save some, whether we call it open space or not, I'm not sure it matters to me, but I can certainly save some trees as part of our landscape plan, between, what I see as the future house and the, abutter's home, which may alleviate some of the stress on this application.
I mean, because I think like, so how it was originally proposed, so his house would have been staring at those evergreens, right? And, yeah,
All right, I think it's a good question. I'm just trying to learn from it here, but yeah. So if I could save those trees, those evergreens, by repositioning, flipping this house, maybe mirror imaging it or doing some work there, with a common drive, that would certainly, protect the open, I think the critical open space in this, at least from the abutter's perspective.
yeah, and then the only, I guess we're sort of dancing around it, but if there's,
Oops, Jeremy, you muted yourself.
yeah, sorry, if there's going to be, I don't know if the additional trees that are being, that will be proposed, will they be in the, just landscaping, or will some be in the, like the, in some of the original or new open space?
I think I have three categories for that. One would, yes, the answer is yes to both. It would be general site landscaping, open space landscaping, and then some cleared areas. And then that kind of bled into invasives, which went into a need for a management plan. So maybe 4 areas where I need to do some work as it relates to vegetation, I guess, on this site.
So the area that I'm highlighting on screen, Jeremy, is area H on the submitted plans. It's not designated open space now. It is disturbed, it's, I think. So that's one of those middle categories that, to call it new open space may need some trees or other attention. Remediation, that's the word. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, I mean, I guess just by the by, I don't know if like dealing with all the invasives is, if the homeowners associations are gonna be, willing to really take that on. I mean, just from, it's not, it's apples to oranges, but just in seeing like the work that's being done in the town through how it comes through the CPC, it's not cheap. And I don't know, it seems like a lot. I'm just wondering, like, will that plan be something reasonable that the homeowners associations can actually accomplish?
It's easier to get things while they're small and just getting established, because those
No.
invasives weren't there initially, right? We're not asking them to like clear up a 25-year-old Phragmites patch. We're just saying where you cleared and you created an edge,
Yeah, okay,
manage the invasive species there.
I see.
Mr. Brown, do you have your hand raised, or did you just not put it down previously?
I didn't put it down. I apologize.
Yep, no problem. All right, board members,
Randy?
any other? Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Jonathan.
A couple other things, Jim, when you're revising your plan, you might want to correct the spelling of Londonderry.
I can do that. Thank you.
It's not Londonderry, as I understand it, it's Londonderry.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it says in the plan, but I will
It
fix it.
says Londonderry.
Thank you.
The other question I have for you is, this lot over here behind Fairview Commons,
Yes.
what is the deal on that?
I think there's some owner's title issue on that.
Is that calculated as part of the open space?
No, that's not part of it. It was never part of this project. That's
It's
it's a separate piece of
a
land.
separate piece of land.
But there's an old title issue there, and I don't know that's a 10-year-old kind of stale memory, so I just don't know.
So Ed McCormick still owns it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
The estate
I'm not holding out on you. I know there was an issue with that lot, which is why we never included it.
Stonepath owns it, but it's not part of the
Okay, it's
not
not, never been part of the
extended,
development.
Yeah,
development. Yeah,
Okay.
right.
I looked at that as well. I thought, boy, that would be a great spot to designate some open space.
Yeah.
I was told that the title had issues and wasn't an option.
Okay,
Anything else, Jonathan?
not for tonight.
Jim, for your landscape plan, there's a recommended tree list that the tree committee has posted on their webpage. You're probably
Where is
familiar
that?
with it.
I am.
And I think the approved, either the OSRD or the subdivision had tree lists in those 41 sheets. So you had tree lists approved in the subdivision.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so let's see. It sounds like we need a motion to continue this application and we need a date to continue it too.
Yeah, what's your suggestion, Jim?
I would like at least a month and I would probably going to need two.
So sometime in
So our
January?
January meeting,
12 or 26.
What is it? 12?
12 or 26.
If the 12's available, I prefer 12.
Okay, January
Okay.
12th?
so we need a
So-
motion to continue the public hearing to January 12th
At 6 o'clock?
at 6 o'clock, yeah?
Okay,
And
so-
here, do we have to
What?
continue it to a place?
Time, place certain.
Time, place?
January 12th, 2023, Kim. Ugh,
6 P.M. here in town
6
hall.
PM at Town Hall.
Moved, Randy.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you,
Second.
Malcolm, for seconding. Any further discussion? Jeremy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Jonathan, what's your vote?
Aye.
Malcolm, what's your vote?
Aye.
Then I will vote aye also. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. Have a good
Thank
night.
you very much. Appreciate your patience.
Happy holidays, since we won't see you until January.
Yeah, appreciate that. Likewise.
Not for this, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, as promised, I think I still submit this to you.
Okay, so I'll take into the record, Mr. Scalise' outline and
Partial release request and then
partial release for
There's-
some of the lots.
if you need extensions for me for that, there's no urgency. I'm not pressing on that. I just,
Have your emails to me too?
I actually have a link to it on my phone. I'm gonna send it to you right now.
Okay. Okay,
So if there's, I don't know if there's deadlines on such a thing, but if there is, I'm happy to write you a letter. You really need to tell you
deadlines on,
on a reviewing an application like that. You know what I mean?
I don't,
I don't
Think
think
so.
there
Is
is.
the time run out?
no, I don't think there's any,
Okay.
trying to find my agenda here, Brandon.
That's okay. The next item is the zoning amendments for Stockbridge Road. And I wondered, given Pedro's absence, if you just wanted to introduce the text or if we want to continue this to our next meeting.
Well, I guess I can say sort of what I said in my email transmittal to the board on Tuesday about this draft zoning amendment for Stockbridge Road. So what I've tried to do is accommodate ideas that Pedro has had over the last year or two, which he was calling the MXH, the Mixed Use Housing Incentive Zone, with the B2X amendments that the board previously discussed with BRPC's assistance, and under which we looked at those several possible development sites on Stockbridge Road. I tried to combine those as well as what I thought in the bylaw was a pretty useful starting point, which was the smart growth overlay district of, I think it's section 9.13. So I tried to bring all those together. And what I proposed for you, what I've hooked up for you is a new mixed-use housing and overlay zone that on its basis says that multi-unit housing and mixed-use developments would be by right in this area. And I'm proposing, just for talking purposes, discussion purposes, the area that's north of the Belcher Square where the existing B2X zoning line is. From there north to and including the Jennifer House Commons and the Holiday Inn Express. So that's the overlay zone. North of that becomes lots of floodplain, thanks Jim. Lots of floodplain and areas that aren't as developable, so it's
Right.
no use going north of that. So in return for allowing a by right process of relatively dense developments, multifamily or mixed use, so it'd be a by right process, again, site plan review only. There would have to be the inclusion of at least 20% of the units at least 100% of the area median income. And from there, so that's the basis of the give and the take. And then from there, additional density could be added if additional benefits were added to the town. So more units at a greater affordability level, you know, deeper affordability level to people at 80% or 60% of area median income. Inclusion of childcare, assuming we need childcare. Those are ideas that came from Pedro's proposals of a year or two ago. So that's the as I'll repeat myself, the basis of the give and the take. You know, trying to get more housing units, particularly units in the middle of the affordability range, and then if a developer wants to do more affordable units, then possibly granting additional density. That's the basic structure. Now, there were some considerations which I tried to include in my which you can see in the PDF that I sent you in the sidebars, some important points that I thought were would be useful to the board as you considered. Now, why the heck did Chris write that? I tried to put my ideas in the sidebar, and then towards the end of the bylaw on page 3 of my draft, some considerations that still I think we should look at. The landscaping, you know, this one tree per 25 feet of frontage is pretty darn onerous, I think, and we've encountered that actually. So maybe revising that.
Should we go back to town meeting?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Looking at the parking, where the parking is, thinking about if any part of the lot is open space, what kind of open space do you want that to be? Lighting and design standards. So, and then finally, some of the things in the smart growth overlay district that I thought might be useful to use, to incorporate in here, or to at least draw inspiration from, were the site design standards and the building design standards. Those are in section 9.13. And they might be useful if you're granting a larger than we've seen previously development by right, then there should probably be some standards set to what should be built. And I thought those were useful to look at and think about. Okay. So that's my pitch.
It's a good introduction, and I like that it's an overlay. I have not had a chance to cross-reference it with the smart growth overlay district, but I like that idea too, because I think it puts consistency in our code.
And before you go on, Jonathan, I looked at just using the smart growth overlay district section 9.13, and there are several smart growth subzones, including the Housatonic Mills, the Rising Mill, and then on South Main Street in Great Barrington, where the current development is happening. And I thought, well, why don't we just add another subzone and call it Stockbridge Road? But then that comes along with all of the smart growth 40R requirements, meaning 20% of the units at 80% AMI. And this board was talking about more moderate income. And there are other there are other plan approval procedures and some other things that come along with 40R. So rather than putting a subsection within 9.13,
Those came from the state, right? 40R.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, the SGOD was incentive, we got incentives for
Correct.
creating the SGOD and then incentives for building.
And we
the
could use the
SGOD.
architecture of section 9.13. We could put a subzone in there for Stockbridge Road. We wouldn't get more state payments for that because it's not necessarily done through the DHCD, the Massachusetts
But
DHCD
wasn't there
process.
something about the SGOD? Didn't it have to be a separate?
It had to be
bylaw?
separate and by right, had to be almost fully self-contained.
Right, so if we add other things into that, doesn't that violate the self-contained?
As long as it's by right, it's okay. In any case, I thought it was
Yeah, it's
got a little
fine.
too clunky to put it into 9.13 and. If we had this own new overlay district and the board and the townspeople liked it, then it could be expanded to other areas if that was beneficial, so.
So this overlay only applies, the existing zoning remains,
Correct,
and this only applies if there's an element of affordable housing as part of it.
exactly,
Okay,
yeah, and if there's that element, by right. So that's the, you know, this board has heard a lot that special permits are a great hindrance to creating housing opportunities, so that's why I've started at that point.
Okay.
So I think we have a lot to chew on there. We had initially thought of setting aside the 21st of November to have a second meeting, even though we don't customarily have a second meeting in November. We do tentatively still have that in the calendar. I recognize it's a challenge for people with the holidays. But even if we had a virtual meeting to discuss it, maybe that could be a little bit more accommodating to folks.
yeah, I'm gonna be virtual anyway. I'm gonna be out of town until December.
Well, I don't think whether it's virtual or
Doesn't matter.
in person.
I think it's the-
Matters in terms
yeah.
of convenience particularly.
I think it's
So-
the 22nd, it's Tuesday,
Okay, I'm sorry, I had the 21st down in my calendar, so I need to change that.
all right?
So we should read through this in detail and cross-reference to the sections that Chris suggested. Look at those considerations at the bottom of the page. I don't disagree with you about the Route 7 landscaping, so we probably need to come up with some sort of alternative. And yeah, we'll take this up on the 22nd, if that's good with everyone.
Mhm.
Kind of make that the
Remember
focus of the
one-
meeting.
Remember the
Thank
Route
you,
7
Chris.
Route 7 landscaping, we had originally proposed 50 feet and then it was amended on the floor of the town meeting.
Yeah.
But, you know, we could go back with examples of what we've had to review and where the 25 feet has become a real problem, so.
I looked at,
No,
I looked at what we did for landscaping on Main Street here downtown, and the ornamental trees are at 25-foot intervals, so the short, small ornamentals are at 25 foot, which works in a nice, in a downtown environment where you have an otherwise really wide corridor.
Yeah, and small trees.
And small trees, and the big trees are at least at a 50-foot interval, if not more. And you know, so maybe 25 is fine if you,
If you want.
you want
a
small
whole line of
trees.
small trees there,
but thinking about some things that this board has talked about before with Stockbridge Road, this was one of the other things I was trying to incorporate, was if you have a really wide right of way and a really wide corridor, and all of a sudden you have big buildings, how do you moderate those buildings? Maybe small trees aren't enough. Maybe you'd rather have larger trees with room to grow and to soften bigger buildings. But that's something to think about.
okay.
Also, I noticed that this includes a front yard, whereas the B2X does not.
Again, that was my rationale for requiring some sort of front yard, a minimum and a maximum, but some sort of front yard was to give plenty of place for landscaping to be possible. And that was something we talked about last meeting and the meeting before.
The other thing we talked about at that time, Jonathan, if you recall, was that the B2X has some precedent of 0 front yard setback, and
Right.
this section of Stockbridge Road does not. It has more of a suburban feel to it already. So, you know, if we wanted to transition the whole thing to 0 front yard setback, it's going to be very incongruous until the corridor is fairly well developed.
I'm just not sure how much of a tree you can plant in 10 feet. That would not have an adverse impact on the structure.
Right, I mean, obviously you'd have to work around that and on a site plan review, look at that maybe.
I wonder if Stockbridge Road is, the right of way there, the town owned right of way is pretty wide on Stockbridge Road, isn't it?
It's pretty wide, it goes on the east side from like the back of the sidewalk, and then on the west side, it's a good 5 to 10 feet westerly of the overhead power line.
So it's just the sidewalk and in is the right of way.
Yeah,
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
poles do not mark the,
the poles are inside the right of way, and the right of way line is
Yeah.
probably a good 5 feet beyond that.
Okay.
You'll see poles and hydrants and
Yeah.
some other infrastructure.
Which may help with the tree planting.
Yeah, and so you really need to get back beyond those overhead power lines in order to plant trees
Or we-
also.
we need to underground them.
Yeah, that won't happen.
Underground trees or underground power lines?
Unless that California double billionaire moves to Great Barrington and wants to make a donation. Those power lines are not moving.
We can get Ryan, what's his name from, from Sandusville.
All right, somebody's gonna need to catch Jackie up on this zoning proposal, since we've been kind of picking at it for a couple of years.
You went
Cool.
into acronyms too, so I was really lost. in
Oh.
numbers.
Oh, we're so sorry. Please ask questions, Jackie, if we start
Oh,
talking
no,
in
no, that would
acronyms.
take up way too much time. I'll do it on the side.
This is full immersion, right? Learning a new language.
Yeah, really, this is over your head.
No.
Chris, I'm sorry.
Well,
Yeah, Jeremy.
Jeremy, did you have a
So
question?
I'm sorry, I'm just with the right of ways again. So on the east side, you said it's just to the sidewalk boundary? Is what approximately? Is that what you said?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. And the west side, it's 5 feet further than the power lines, approximately.
Yeah, ish,
Okay.
yeah.
And that right of way is the town's right of way?
Oh, it's the states.
It's the state's, okay.
oh, we can get the state to plant the trees.
And that right away, how does that right away continue past Jennifer House Commons and the Holiday Inn? Does it continue?
Yes,
Okay. On both sides of the road, correct?
yeah, the state owns Route 7 all the way to the Stockbridge line.
Okay.
Can I ask why, Jeremy? Why the
Well,
question?
I'm still thinking about that west side sidewalk.
Oh. Okay,
Bike lanes.
No, I'm thinking sidewalk. I'm much more of a sidewalk person than because bike lanes are really only good for, some people, where sidewalks are good for everyone.
How about ski lanes?
Well, that I'd like that to be good for everyone. Can we do some sort of a town code thing for that?
no. All right,
Retroactively, just everywhere?
thank you, Chris. You did a nice job framing that up and starting to make sense of all the discussions we've had.
Great.
So move on to board and subcommittee updates, issues and concerns. Jonathan, are you on any committees right now? Huh, I think you're not.
Well, design review.
Oh, design review. Okay,
Yeah, but it hasn't met, and at
okay.
least that I'm aware of.
So no updates, issues or concerns? Malcolm?
I just want to report to you about the housing subcommittee. Jeremy and I had a meeting this week with the housing subcommittee, and we're making progress on the list, the worksheet that we've created with the different ideas. What we've done is we're beginning to categorize them into those that have a direct effect on creating new housing, those of which are like a lot of our actions, which are really empowering as opposed to having a direct impact. Those that have proposed that are more transitioning housing to affordable housing. There's some initiatives like that. So we're trying to categorize those things so we can get towards prioritizing them. And then we've taken some of the initiatives, and the members of the subcommittee have taken 2 or 3, and we're going to go flesh those out in detail. And then probably after the next meeting, we'll do more and flesh those out in detail, so we can come down to some kind of comprehensive list of the different initiatives that different people have come up with. That's where we are.
You're muted, Brandy.
Jeremy, anything for you?
So we went since last time. Yeah, since last time we did in CPC, we went through step 1s, we're having a hard time setting meetings. So I think we're waiting. Is that right, Chris, for a doodle poll to set our
for the reminder.
Yeah, to set our step 2, so our step 2 meetings, or I guess maybe we're just doing the poll for the first one. I guess it's not really a subcommittee thing, but I did go to that. I was a little late, but I went to that Berkshire Habitats and the Trust meeting, informational meeting about the North Plain Road project. And it was great. There were like potential homeowners there. So it was, I think it was successful. It was neat to see the interaction between Habitat and and then get further explanation from them, but then with the people that had come.
Great, thank you. Jackie, this is the time in our meeting where we would share any subcommittee updates or raise any separate issues or concerns that aren't specifically on the agenda. I don't know if you have any thoughts initially, or just want to make you aware of this time that lives on every agenda.
Thank you very much, Brandy. I'm looking forward to having something to say.
Sounds good. Okay, I don't have any issues or concerns at this point. So Chris, do you have a town planner's report?
No, nothing tonight.
Okay. Do we have any citizens who wish to speak? It looks like there's nobody in the room, but there are still 3 people online.
Correct.
Just raise your hand if you're online and Chris can unmute you. All right, seeing no hands raised, we'll adjourn at 7:48. Thank you very much, everybody.
Feel better, Brandy.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Met your deadline.